All we need is a little understanding. Walk a mile in their shoes. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Truths We Hide podcast. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine, and I'm so excited because he just celebrated yesterday 5 years of sobriety. And I say this as it's just a huge deal because what I didn't know, what he's going to share with you, is that he was an alcoholic for 30 years. And as his friend, when we were stationed together in El Paso, I had no idea. And, he just retired as a major in the Army in 2018. He spent 28 and a half years of service. And I just, man, this story is so touching and just surprising at the same time because he was the functioning alcoholic and we had no idea. And yeah, so Jay, thank you so much for being here on earth, really, because when we talk about your article later on, you almost didn't survive. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's also awesome to reconnect with. So I'll say this real quick. Yeah, I did spend a lot of time in the military, but what I didn't do, like most other people, was I didn't get really close to a lot of the people that I worked with. You happen to be an exception, and another Army major named Stephen Doling. We just became friends, and because I didn't trust a lot of people, and if my secret, did get out, I kind of figured that, you guys wouldn't say anything, or I don't know. It's just I seem to, but my bar friends, down at Three Pints Pub, right? I tell them everything. I mean, yeah, right. But they'd see me every day, have 9 or 10 beers at the bar, and then just go home. It was just. But so were they. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I trusted people who drank more than I trusted, people that are going to save my life in combat, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
So, but I mean, and that brings me back around to the circle is, why, and I will do this as a disclaimer. I have no ill will towards the military, any branch of service or whatever. But it's and you ask just about anyone, it's kind of expected that that you drink, and I think they're getting a little bit better with it now, especially recognizing people with problems with PTSD and different mental defects and stuff like that. Like we all have issues, and I definitely think the Army especially, because that's the only one I can really speak of, in the Air Force, because I sponsor guys that are I sponsor a lot of veterans in the program, and you really can't say that the 2 letters, so we just say the 12-step program. There's a bunch of them out there, but mine just happens to be the most popular one, right? And you're expected to drink, and then you're expected to stop, and then you're expected to go home and act like a gentleman, conduct unbecoming an officer. Well, my conduct was always unbecoming because I was I was legally over the limit. If I was driving home from the bar, even though it was a quarter mile down the road, I just drank 10 beers, and here I go, illegally driving. That's kind of course, being military police, right? There we go. Just adding insult to injury. But the breaking point for me came, I actually read kind of it's not really a poem, but it's kind of a story about the pandemic. and how the pandemic has changed us. Well, I look at this pandemic that we're going through, just like alcoholism was for me. You don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know, what's going to happen. It's a life of uncertainty. Because every time I would drink, and that I wouldn't necessarily get drunk, because I had learned how to, you saw, you were my ultimate witness, for your listeners. Annette and I used to, me, her, and Steven, and, sometimes some other people, whatever. I was big into bike riding, whether it be on the road or mountain biking and all that stuff. But I used to drink while I was, we'd go ride 30 miles on our road bikes. And my water bottle would be filled with, probably 4 or 5 shots of Grey Goose. Actually, it was Tito's. Down there, it was Tito's. We drank a lot of, I drank a lot of Tito's. And Tito's and Gatorade. It'd be 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And, I'd already be on past my first pint. And it wasn't because I had the shakes. It wasn't because, it's almost, I don't know, it's like having breakfast. It just became so natural that, and I could still, again, it didn't take me out of my element. Like people would say, well, you just say that. And I'm like, I'm telling you. And I'll fast forward to when I finally ended up in rehab in 2015. And I asked my wife why she never asked me to quit drinking. Now, this is my wife, who I spend an inordinate amount of time with. And I said, how come you never asked me to stop drinking? And she said, I didn't know you had a problem. We've been together 11 years at the time, 12 years at the time. Come on. So that means that's probably why I make such a good NSA agent, right? So that's kind of what happened. But I came to the point where I thought it would be better for me to not be on this planet anymore. And while I was preparing to do such a unnecessary and dastardly deed, my daughter, who was 3.5 years old at the time, came up to my bathroom door, and she knocked on the door, and she said, "Daddy, are you reading me a story tonight?" And that's when, like, it all just, that was, we call it the rupture. This whole thing. That's when the pressure became so much that, all right, I have to make a decision right now. I'm either going to go through with what I'm planning on doing, or I'm going to finally ask somebody for help and not put my daughter into, treatment and rehab the rest of her life because, she knocked on the door and then 2 minutes later her dad was gone. And that was it. And I honestly believe that through some outside force, we call it in the rooms, our higher power intervened through my daughter, like possessed my daughter. Because my daughter, Brenna knew better. She knew that, you don't go in daddy's room and especially if he's in the bathroom, not, knocking on the door, and she did that night without any fear. I even asked her about it, and she doesn't remember it. So that tells me that, God kind of floated down in her, body, took over for a few minutes, knocked on the door and said, hey, Jay, it's time to grow up. And I will tell anybody that's out there, man, you don't have to wait. It's because it's tough growing up when you're almost 50, so if you're thinking about, maybe I have a problem, or if some of the things I start to say to you start to resonate with you and you start shaking your head, nodding, starting to agree, like, hey man, this sounds really familiar. Annette will have my contact information afterwards, and you guys can feel free to reach out to me anonymously. Of course, if you email me, I'll see your name or whatever, but I will never share it with anyone else. And that's basically what's happened to me. The first almost year being in a program, and that almost killed me, was following all these suggestions and see, I'm an Army officer, so you order me to do something and I'm good to go, but don't make suggestions. This is a program of suggestions. It says right in the big book that this is a program of suggestion only. And it's like, well, why? Well, just tell me what to do, and it's like, well, we're going to suggest it and then you have to do it on your own. Like, oh no, that's the worst thing you could have told me. And then I have to sit through these meetings and listen to all these people and their problems, and good Lord, And then I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and these people, not everybody, but enough of them started sounding like me, and they started sounding like my story. And that's when I started to compare. It's called compare in or compare out. It's like sitting around a campfire with a bunch of veterans, and the Army guys and the Marine guys are like, yeah. We look at the Air Force guys, and it's like, what'd you get, a rug burn, right? It's we compare and compare out, and I jest at the Air Force only because I'm jealous that, or that I never went Air Force myself, because my body's pretty beat up after all this time. And I will say this: my program, the fellowship, right? Kind of like if you're in the military and the band of brothers and stuff, that has, I can say without any reservation, has gotten me through some of the hardest points in my life. And this is while in sobriety. So, if anyone's listening and you guys, want to peek over the fence like Wilson, right? I'm telling you right now, just because you get sober doesn't mean the crap in your life stops happening. But what does happen is the stuff that you cause, like the DUIs and the, I've never hit my wife with my hands, but I beat the crap out of her with my mouth. The yelling and why can't you be this and why can't you do that, and how some of us who don't have drinking problems could have a few drinks and then all of a sudden the potty mouth comes out, or you say things that they're the truth but they shouldn't be said in that certain way, right. So I'm not saying, and again, here's the thing, the only person, okay, on this planet that can tell you you're an alcoholic is the person you're looking at in the mirror. I'm going to say that again. The only person that can say that you're actually an alcoholic is you. Okay. Now you can have a doctor say, hey, Annette, your liver enzymes are through the roof and blah, 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 blah. You may have a drinking problem. You can have, there's a pamphlet that you answer, 20 questions. I got 100 on that one. I think I got extra credit. I got like 105. I got an A++, because I wrote down 3 or 4 more questions that they should have asked, and I answered those too, like never have I ever, and there was no never have I ever. The only thing was, have you ever killed anyone, while drinking or whatever, and that was the only one that was a no. But those are called yets. We call them yets, right? And yet in my program means you're eligible to, which means, well, I haven't gone to prison. And then we end that with yet. I haven't physically hit my wife yet, but it's coming, because I've like I said, I've only been in 5 years, but I've gained the wisdom of hundreds and hundreds of years by listening to people with 30, 40, 50 years sober. My son's piano teacher, her husband, his name is Stu, and he has 55 years of sobriety. So, and we became friends. So when I used to drop my son off for piano lessons, he would go upstairs to see his teacher, and I would go downstairs in the man cave to see mine. And we would sit and we would just talk. We just talk about stuff, just talk about life. And I would ask him all these questions about, being sober and what to expect and all that stuff. And he told me, he goes, expect the unexpected. He goes, but one thing you can be certain of is that if you don't pick up a drink, you can't get drunk. And that sounds right, like common sense, right? In that, right?
Right. Yeah, sure.
You pick up a gun, you can't get shot. But right, you can't shoot yourself with a gun that you don't pick up. But that made the most sense. But then you say, well, how do I not pick up a drink?
Yeah.
When I tried that for years, every day I'd leave work, I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to stop there. Oh, I'm not going to blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, you remember when our kids took the karate, remember in the little plaza there, the karate class, right?
Yeah.
And where was that?